I should have known better than to expect anything different. Sunday dinners at the Lancaster household were an event. Not the warm, chatty kind with laughter and shared stories. No, these were performance dinners. The dining room was a stage, the long mahogany table a battleground where status, deals, and achievements were exchanged like currency. My father, Richard Lancaster, sat at the head of the table, swirling a glass of ridiculously expensive wine, while discussing the latest acquisition for Lancaster Industries. My older brother, Daniel, sat to his right, soaking up every word like an obedient heir. He had been groomed for this, born into the golden child role with an effortless arrogance that made it clear he had never known a day of doubt in his life. And me? Amelia. The other child. The one who worked just as hard, harder, but still never counted. I don't know why I even tried. Maybe some stupid part of me still believed that if I just proved myself enough, they'd see me. I actually have something for the next board meeting, I said, keeping my tone casual, like I wasn't already bracing for the reaction. My father raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. It's a cybersecurity initiative. I've spent the last few months analyzing our vulnerabilities, and I think we could. I didn't even get to finish before he waved a hand. Cybersecurity? Amelia, that's not the direction we're moving in. I blinked. What do you mean? Tech security is one of the fastest growing concerns for businesses our size. We already have experts handling that, he said dismissively, taking a sip of wine. Daniel smirked. No offense, sis, but Dad's right. Maybe stick to projects that fit your skill set. There it was. That patronizing tone. That infuriating, condescending way he had of speaking to me like I was a child interrupting the grown-ups. I literally have a degree in this, I said, my voice tight. Yes, and I'm sure it's very impressive, my father said, already moving on. But let's talk about something that actually affects the company. Just like that, I was invisible again. The conversation flowed effortlessly away from me as if I had never spoken. And I just sat there. I pushed my food around my plate, my stomach twisting, but not with sadness. Not even anger. No, it was clarity. I had spent my whole life trying to prove myself to people who were never going to see me as their equal. I could bring them gold on a platter, and they'd still say, "That's cute, dear." I wasn't going to fight for a seat at their table anymore. I was going to build my own. After that dinner, something in me shifted. Not in an explosive, dramatic way. No yelling, no storming out, no grand declarations of defiance. Just a quiet realization that I was done. I had spent years playing their game, following the invisible rules of my father's world, waiting for the moment when he'd finally look at me and say, "Yes, Amelia, you belong here." But that moment was never going to come. The final nail in the coffin came 2 weeks later. I had spent days perfecting my proposal. Despite my father's dismissal at dinner, I wasn't going to let it go that easily. This wasn't just some pet project. I had the numbers, the projections, and the research to back it up. Lancaster Industries had a major blind spot in its cybersecurity infrastructure. I had found vulnerabilities that could cost us millions, possibly more, if left unchecked. I had a solution. So I walked into that boardroom, head high, laptop in hand, determined to prove my worth. The room was filled with the usual faces, high-level executives, investors, a few legal advisors, and of course my father and Daniel. The meeting was already in full swing. Talks of market trends and acquisition targets filling the space. When the time came for new business proposals, I took a deep breath and stood. I've put together a cybersecurity strategy that could mitigate major risks in our data security systems, I began. If we don't address these vulnerabilities now, we're looking at potential breaches which would. My father barely glanced up. Amelia, this isn't necessary, he interrupted, waving a hand. I faltered. What do you mean? We haven't even looked at. We have a dedicated tech team handling security. They're outdated, I countered, trying to keep my voice even. Our system is years behind modern security standards. I ran tests myself. There are loopholes hackers could exploit right now. Enough. His voice was final. Just like that, I was shut down. Daniel smirked at me across the table, arms crossed, enjoying the show. The investors barely looked interested. I felt something cold settle in my chest. We're not going to waste resources on hypotheticals, my father said, looking past me as if I wasn't even in the room. Daniel, let's move on to the acquisition strategy. And that was it. My entire proposal, dismissed without a second glance. I sat back down, gripping the edges of my laptop so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't hear the rest of the meeting. My thoughts were a blur of I shouldn't be surprised and I hate that I still am. This wasn't just about the project. It was never about the project. It was about me. I could have presented the cure for cancer, and they still would have brushed me aside. Because in their eyes I was never going to be more than the little girl playing business. By the time the meeting ended, I had already made my decision. If they weren't going to take me seriously here, then I would make them take me seriously somewhere else. I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to build something better. I didn't quit right away. I wanted to. Every single day after that board meeting, I had to fight the urge to stand up, toss my ID badge on the table and walk out. But leaving in anger would have been too easy. If I left in frustration, they'd just think I was being emotional, that I'd eventually come crawling back with my tail between my legs. I refused to give them that satisfaction. So I stayed. For months I played my role, attended meetings, nodded in the right places, pretended to be the obedient daughter. But behind the scenes, I was building something of my own. Started with an idea. If my father didn't think cybersecurity was important, I'd prove him wrong in a way he couldn't ignore. The problem was I didn't have the resources to do it alone. I needed someone who knew the industry inside and out, someone with the technical expertise to complement my business acumen. That's when I reached out to Madison Davis. Madison was a name that floated around in tech circles, a brilliant mind, but someone who had been burned one too many times by corporate politics. She had started out in one of the big firms, but had walked away after getting screwed over on a major project. I had only met her once before at a conference, but I remembered her. More importantly, I remembered the way she hated the way corporate leadership dismissed innovation for the sake of their own egos. So I sent her an email. And to my surprise, she responded the same day. We met for coffee in a quiet spot outside the city. I laid everything out, the research I had done, the vulnerabilities I had found, and my idea for a security firm that would actually prioritize innovation instead of just doing the bare minimum. She listened carefully, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Let me get this straight," she said finally. "You want to build a cybersecurity firm from the ground up. You have no infrastructure, no funding, and you're still technically working for Lancaster Industries." "Yes," I said without hesitation. "And you think we can take on companies with actual resources?" "Not think," I corrected. "No." She studied me for a long moment, then smirked. "You know what? Screw it. I'm in." And just like that, Davis & Partners was born. We started small. A skeleton operation. Madison handled the technical side, coding, developing the security solutions, testing every possible weak spot. I handled the business strategy, funding, connections, structuring our service model. Since I couldn't afford to be discovered just yet, I worked in the shadows. Madison became the public face of the company, while I orchestrated everything behind the scenes. At first, we were just another no-name startup. But then came our first breakthrough. A mid-sized financial firm was hacked, and their in-house IT team was scrambling to contain the damage. Madison had a connection who got us in the door. We offered to step in not just to fix the problem but to prevent it from happening again. They were desperate. They agreed. And we delivered. Word spread fast. Other companies started reaching out, startups, law firms, private financial institutions, all looking for security solutions that were actually proactive instead of just patching up problems after they happened. In 6 months, we went from 2 people in a coffee shop to an actual thriving business. But my family, they had no idea. I still showed up to work at Lancaster Industries every morning, pretending to be the overlooked daughter while, in the background, I was building something that would change everything. And the best part? I wasn't even close to done. For the next 2 years, I lived a double life. By day, I was still Amelia Lancaster, the daughter who was tolerated at Lancaster Industries but never truly respected. I played my part well, sat in meetings, contributed just enough to stay under the radar, and smiled through the thinly veiled condescension. But by night, I was something else entirely. Davis & Partners wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Madison and I had an unspoken agreement. My name stayed out of everything. Not on legal documents, not on the website, not on press releases. On paper, Davis & Partners belonged entirely to her. I was fine with it. In fact, I wanted it that way. Because the moment my father found out what I was building, he would do everything in his power to kill it before it got too big. And I wasn't about to let that happen. Our company had already made a name for itself with mid-sized clients, but the real turning point came when a Fortune 500 company approached us. They had experienced a near breach. Someone had attempted to penetrate their systems, but they weren't sure how far the hackers had gotten. Their internal security team had no answers. They needed experts. And guess who they called? Madison and I worked nonstop for weeks analyzing, stress testing, and tearing apart their entire infrastructure to figure out what had happened. What we found? Terrifying. Their system had already been compromised, they just didn't know it yet. The hackers had planted backdoors, waiting for the right moment to cripple the company from the inside. If we hadn't caught it, they would have lost billions. After we patched the breach and secured their system, the CEO asked Madison to meet privately. He made her an offer. A multi-million-dollar contract to make Davis & Partners their official cybersecurity provider. This wasn't just a win. It was a declaration. We weren't some no-name startup anymore. We were now playing in the big leagues. And still my father and brother had no clue. Keeping my secret got harder. There were moments when I thought my father was starting to suspect something. Especially when industry rumors about a mysterious new cybersecurity firm started circulating. You know anything about this Davis & Partners company? He asked me once during a board meeting. I kept my expression neutral. No. Why? They're taking a lot of potential contracts from firms that should be working with us. I had to fight the urge to smirk. Maybe you should have taken cybersecurity more seriously, I said. He waved me off, uninterested, already moving on to the next topic. It was almost too easy. He had spent so many years underestimating me that the idea of me running the very company taking clients away from him never even crossed his mind. And that was his biggest mistake. With the Fortune 500 contract locked in, our business exploded. More corporations reached out. More high-profile clients wanted our expertise. Madison had to expand the team, hiring top-tier engineers, ethical hackers, and consultants. Meanwhile, I played my role as the unseen architect, pulling the strings behind the scenes, making the deals, strategizing the moves. I wasn't just building a company. I was quietly dismantling everything my father believed about me. He thought I was small. He thought I was irrelevant. But I had built something so massive that he was already feeling the impact. He just didn't know I was the one causing it. And soon, he'd find out in the most public way possible. Because the moment was coming. The moment where my name would finally step out of the shadows. The moment my father and brother would have to face the truth. And trust me, they weren't ready. It happened at the Vanguard Business Awards Gala. One of the biggest nights in the corporate world, where industry leaders, innovators, and power players gathered under one roof. Deals were made in hushed conversations over champagne. Alliances were formed with a handshake, and reputations were solidified in a single evening. For Lancaster Industries, this event was everything. My father and Daniel attended every year, reveling in the recognition and rubbing shoulders with the elite. This year, Lancaster Industries was nominated for Corporate Excellence in Innovation, a category my father believed they had in the bag. Too bad for him, because that night wasn't about Lancaster Industries. That night was about me. I hadn't planned on going. Davis & Partners had been invited as nominees for Best Emerging Technology Firm. But as usual, Madison was the public face. My plan was to stay behind the scenes like always. But Madison had other ideas. "You're coming to the gala," she told me a few days before. "Absolutely not," I said without hesitation. She grinned. "Too bad. Already got you a seat at our table." I groaned. "Madison." "Nope. You've been in the shadows long enough, Amelia. It's time." I should have argued harder. But a part of me, the part that had been waiting years for this, wanted to see the look on my father's face when he realized he had spent 2 years unknowingly competing against his own daughter. So, for the first time in my life, I walked into an event not as a Lancaster, but as the woman who built something bigger than any of them ever imagined. The gala was as extravagant as ever. Luxury everywhere, gold-trimmed decor, flowing champagne, a string quartet playing softly in the background. I spotted my father and Daniel almost immediately. My father was doing what he did best, shaking hands, talking strategy, charming investors. Daniel, always riding on his coattails, stood nearby, smirking at something one of his banker friends had said. They didn't notice me. They had no reason to. Why would they? In their world I was still no one. The night moved fast. Introductions, networking, people congratulating Madison on the meteoric rise of Davis and Partners. I mostly stood back, letting her work the room. And then finally it was time for the awards. I could feel my pulse in my throat. The first few categories went by in a blur. Then the presenter reached Best Emerging Technology Firm, our category. And the award for Best Emerging Technology Firm goes to Davis and Partners. The room erupted in applause. I stole a glance at my father's table. For the first time that night, my father looked shocked. Daniel frowned, leaning over to whisper something to him. They knew the name. Davis and Partners had been causing problems for them in the market. But they still didn't know who was behind it. Madison walked up to accept the award. She smiled at the audience, adjusted the microphone and said, "There's someone I need to acknowledge tonight. Someone who has been the backbone of this company from day one. The real strategist, the real visionary." She turned to look directly at me. "Amelia Lancaster, please stand up." The world stopped. Every head turned. Every conversation died. And across the room, my father's expression went from mild confusion to absolute shock. Daniel's mouth literally dropped open. I stood slowly, my heart hammering in my chest, but I kept my chin high. Because this was the moment I had waited for my entire life. The room filled with whispers. People were connecting the dots. Lancaster. Wait, that Lancaster? Is she related to Richard Lancaster? Madison continued, completely unfazed. For years she was underestimated, dismissed, and overlooked by people who couldn't see her potential. But while they ignored her, she built something bigger than all of them. She turned back to the audience. And tonight we're here because of her. The applause that followed was thunderous. I barely heard it. All I could focus on was my father's face. For the first time in his life, Richard Lancaster was speechless. I didn't go back to my table right away. I needed air, needed a moment. I stepped outside onto the balcony, taking deep breaths, trying to steady myself. And then I heard his voice behind me. "Amelia." I turned. There he was, Richard Lancaster, the man who never thought I was good enough. For the first time ever, he was looking at me as an equal. There are moments in life where everything shifts. Where the years of frustration, of being dismissed, of feeling invisible, all of it comes to a head. And this was mine. I stood on the balcony of one of the most prestigious business events of the year. The night air cool against my skin, my heart still pounding from the revelation inside. Behind me the gala continued. People were still buzzing over what had just happened. Over me. Over Davis and Partners. Over the fact that Richard Lancaster's daughter had built something that now rivaled his own empire, without him ever knowing. And then there was my father, standing just a few feet away, his face unreadable. I had never seen him like this before. He wasn't angry. He wasn't dismissive. He was stunned. For the first time in my life, Richard Lancaster had no idea what to say to me. And I wasn't going to give him an easy way out. "You've been busy," he finally said. His voice controlled, but I could hear the strain behind it. I didn't say anything. I just crossed my arms and waited. He exhaled through his nose, glancing back toward the ballroom, where people were undoubtedly still whispering about us. About me. About the fact that the woman he had dismissed for years had just stolen the spotlight in a way he never saw coming. "How long?" he asked. "How long have I been running my own company?" I clarified. "Or how long have I known you'd never take me seriously?" He flinched. "Good. Both," he admitted. 2 years, I said. 2 years building something from the ground up while you and Daniel sat in boardrooms ignoring every word I said. His jaw tightened. "You should have come to me." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Come to you? You mean like how I did at that board meeting? Or at every family dinner when I talked about my ideas, and you brushed them aside like they were some cute little hobby?" His face darkened. "I wasn't brushing you aside, Amelia. I was trying to protect you." I froze. "Protect me? Business is cutthroat. I didn't want you to get in over your head and fail." I just stared at him. Because that was bullshit. That's funny, I said, my voice calm but ice cold. Because you never seemed concerned about Daniel failing. You handed him opportunities before he even proved himself. But me. I shook my head. You never even gave me the chance to fail. He was silent. Be honest, I pushed. You never thought I could do this. You thought I was just a kid playing in a world too big for me. He sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. I underestimated you. There it was. The admission. But it didn't feel as satisfying as I thought it would. Because I wasn't looking for his validation anymore. I didn't need it. Before my father could say anything else, the balcony door slammed open, and out walked Daniel. Of course. He was fuming. What the hell was that? He snapped, storming toward me. This whole time, you've been screwing us over. I raised an eyebrow. Screwing you over? Funny, I thought I was just proving that I was actually good at what I do. He scoffed. You went behind our backs. You made us look like idiots. No, Daniel, I said, stepping toward him. I didn't have to do anything for you to look like an idiot. That's just how you are. His face turned red. You think you're better than us now? Just because you won some stupid award. I think I finally stopped waiting for you to admit that I was never the problem. He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. You think this company of yours is gonna last? You don't know how to play this game, Amelia. You got lucky. I smiled. Smirked, actually. Lucky? Is that what you think? I leaned in, lowering my voice. Then why are you sweating, big brother? His nostrils flared, and for the first time ever, I saw something in Daniel's eyes that I had never seen before. Fear. Because deep down, he knew. He knew that I wasn't just some lucky upstart. I had built something real. Something stronger than Lancaster Industries. And it scared the hell out of him. My father exhaled heavily, looking at both of us before turning his attention fully to me. You've made your point, he said, his voice controlled again. So what happens now? I tilted my head. What do you mean? Do you want back in? I blinked. Excuse me. Lancaster Industries is still your family's legacy. Whatever disagreements we've had, you're still a Lancaster. I'm offering you a place at the table. A place at the table. After everything, after years of being ignored, after building my own empire from nothing, now he wanted to offer me a seat? I laughed. Actually laughed. You really think I'd come back? That I'd trade what I've built just to work under you again? His expression hardened. You'd be working with me, he corrected. No, I said, shaking my head. I'd be working for you. And I'm never doing that again. I could see the muscle in his jaw clench. This isn't personal, Amelia, he said, his voice clipped. It's business. I smiled, stepping past him toward the door. Exactly. And then I left him standing there, the most powerful man in the room, completely powerless for the first time in his life. Days later, my father tried one last move. He reached out to Madison. He offered to buy Davis and Partners, to fold it into Lancaster Industries, to bring me back under his control. I didn't even let Madison entertain the offer. We sent a single reply. Not for sale. Because I had one. Not by taking over his company. Not by proving myself to him. I won because I built something entirely my own. And I never needed his approval to do it. I wish I could say my father suddenly became the doting, supportive parent I always wanted. He didn't. And that's okay. Because I stopped living for his validation a long time ago. Today, Davis and Partners is one of the most influential cybersecurity firms in the industry. We keep growing. We keep innovating. And Lancaster Industries? They're struggling to keep up. I guess they should have listened to me when they had the chance. But hey, they'll figure it out eventually. Or they won't. Either way, I'm doing just fine. Smirking face. It's funny how life works sometimes. For years, I thought success meant winning my father's approval. I thought it meant proving to him that I was worthy of being at his table. But standing here now, looking at everything I've built, I realize that success isn't about them. It never was. It's about me. And I wouldn't trade that realization for anything. A week after the gala, my father made one last attempt to regain control. I was in my office when Madison walked in, holding up her phone with an amused expression. Guess who just called me? I didn't even need to guess. Let me guess, Richard Lancaster? Ding ding ding, she said. And you're gonna love what he offered. I leaned back in my chair. Let me hear it. She pulled up her notes. He wants to buy Davis and Partners, roll it into Lancaster Industries, and, get this, offer you a senior executive position. I almost laughed. Almost. Did he give a number? He's willing to go up to 9 figures. 9 figures. For a second I let that sink in. Because that was huge. That was my father, the man who had dismissed me, ignored me, refused to take me seriously, finally realizing that what I built was valuable. But the best part? I didn't need his money. What do you think? Madison asked, smirking. I smiled. Send him a reply. Madison raised an eyebrow. And what do you want it to say? 2 words, not 4. Sale. Madison grinned. God, I love you. And just like that it was done. My father never reached out again. I think that was the moment he finally understood. I wasn't coming back. I wasn't waiting for his validation. I had built something that was mine, something bigger than Lancaster Industries could ever hope to be. And nothing he could offer would ever change that. Meanwhile, things at Lancaster Industries weren't great. Oh, they were still powerful, still successful, but their hold over the market had weakened. Davis and Partners was now the name people trusted. We had the best minds, the best innovation, and we weren't tied down by outdated leadership. More and more companies started coming to us instead of them. And Daniel? Let's just say he wasn't handling it well. Last I heard, he was still trying to prove himself, trying to maintain the illusion that he was the future of the company. But the truth was, he was drowning. Because without my father protecting him, Daniel had nothing to offer. I hadn't seen my father since the gala. But a few months later, I ran into him at a business conference. It wasn't planned, I was there for a panel discussion, and he was speaking at a separate event in the same building. We locked eyes across the lobby. For a brief moment, I saw something in his expression. Not anger. Not disappointment. Just acceptance. And maybe, just maybe, the tiniest bit of respect. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Because at the end of the day, I had won. Not by beating him at his own game. Not by taking over Lancaster Industries. But by walking away and building something better. Something that didn't depend on his approval. Today, Davis and Partners is one of the most influential cybersecurity firms in the industry. We keep growing. We keep innovating. We protect the companies that matter. The ones that actually want to stay ahead of the game instead of just reacting when it's too late. And me? I finally understand something that took me years to realize. Success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. I never needed my father's validation. I never needed his company. All I needed was the chance to do what I knew I was capable of. And I did. And I will keep doing it. Because this is just the beginning.